that all that exists that we see around us, whether on this earth or as we look up into the heavens, everything just happened on its own. There's been a great shift in my lifetime away from belief in God to what we call over here, we call it secularism, which is just atheism. The news programs and the entertainment industry, they continue just all around the clock to hammer people with the belief that there is no God. They do this in different ways. Now, in light of this, we need to study this subject we have before us. Why we should believe in God. We need to study this. We need to study it to avoid our falling into the errors that all society and most of the world seems to be falling into. Should we believe in God? Well, yes, we should. And also, what about our children? Our children are assaulted every day by people who believe in blind chance evolution. Schools have become a place of indoctrination to lead a person to think that there is no God, to believe in blind chance evolution. Now, let's start here by pointing out that no one can prove that God does not exist. And if one were to set out to prove God does not exist, he would have to have all the facts in order to prove that God does not exist. A lack of all the facts means evidence for their claim isn't going to happen if they don't have all the facts. Now, do you think of the fact that God can be anywhere he chooses as far as making his presence? The person who would say that God does not exist must be omnipresent. That means he must be everywhere and everywhere at once. He must be able to see all that there is to see at the same time. He has to be like God in order to prove that God does not exist. One cannot prove that God does not exist. Now, there's a difficulty. We recognize that as we try to convert people, that we cannot show God to people. We cannot take them to meet God. We cannot give people a line on the internet to talk to God. We can give evidence why we believe there is a God. And that's what we need to do. As you look at Hebrews 11 and verse 6, but without faith it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to God must believe that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Now, we're not talking about blind faith. The Bible, as you look at what the Bible says about faith, it says that something that we have to take because of testimony that has been given. And Abraham Lincoln. Now, Abraham Lincoln was president of America about 150 years ago. Now, I have never seen nor heard Abraham Lincoln. And yet, I believe there is evidence to show that Abraham Lincoln existed. Now, we're not talking about the kind of evidence where I can hear him or touch him or see him. Now, let me give you a comparison here. In the Bible, in Genesis 15 and verse 20, you read of the Hittites. Now, the Hittites were once thought to be invented. They were a people that were just dreamed up by some fairy tale writer, and the Bible really wasn't true. We can't trust the Bible because there's no such thing as Hittites. But now, evidence started to be found about the Hittites. You can go to the University of Chicago, and you can study the Hittite language. you see, it wasn't easy to come to those understanding of who the Hittites were and if they ever even existed. In Isaiah, in the 20th chapter, in verse 1, we read of King Sargon. Now, once again, for many years, it was claimed that such a person never existed. That this was just something that the Bible writers who are just writing fiction, they just put that in there just to fill in a name here. And yet in more recent times, archaeologists have uncovered the monuments made in the honor of Sargon that recognize that Sargon really did exist. The statue there on the right on your screen is down here in the Oriental Institute at the University of Chicago, not too far from where we live. You can show that Sargon did exist. So as we look at this, people say, well, I don't believe in God. And we cannot show people God in the sense of letting them see him. We cannot give people a line to talk to God. He that comes to God must believe, must come to him in faith, must believe that he is, there in Hebrews 11 and verse 6. So we look at these examples we've given of the Hittites and King Sargon. We can see that it can take some time to work through things to find the facts. And so no one can prove that God does not exist. But if a person is patient and looks through things, he can recognize, yes, there's a good reason to believe that God exists. In Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1, we read, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, having said this, we want to look at the atheists' confidence. They say, oh, that's not so. God did not create the heaven and earth. There is no such thing as God. Atheists, they sound so sure. They're so confident. Well, I don't have that faith like you have. You have to give this up. There's no God. They ridicule Christians' belief in God. But let's recognize that atheists have faith. They have faith themselves. After all, they have no evidence of how the universe came into existence, nor do they know how life came into existence. Now, some of our atheist friends today are telling us that the whole universe used to sit on the head of a pin. Now, we live not too far from the great state of Chicago, which really isn't anywhere near as big as Chennai. Now, just think of saying that the city of Chennai used to sit on the head of a pin. Who would believe that? But there are atheists who believe the whole universe used to sit on the head of a pin. Now, they have faith. They have very great faith. We're told that this small amount of matter that was so tiny that it could sit on the head of a pin, it exploded in all the universe as a result of that explosion. And that all life and all the different forms of life that we see around us, as intricate as all those life forms may seem, that all of those things resulted from blind chance evolution. Now, the atheists have faith. Now, we have to ask, now, who caused the Big Bang, they say, that started all of our universe? Who caused that in the first place? Now, we don't believe in the Big Bang, but at the same time, they believe in the Big Bang, so we have to ask some questions about this. Who caused that first explosion? How do we know? They can make all kinds of They can make all kinds of suggestions and put forth their studied understanding, but they cannot prove anything. Also, what about living matter? You see, living matter is said to have been one result of that explosion. We're talking about spontaneous generation. There was no life, and then suddenly there was life. Now, those people who believe this, they have great faith, but we're not finished yet. They believe that living matter developed into all the complex living things that we see in the world. Now, that picture you have up in the upper left-hand corner, you might think, oh, this is some picture from a monster movie or something. No, that's a living organism. With the invention of the electron microscope, mankind is now to see through the electron microscope the way it can just magnify things just many, many, many times more than a microscope before it. That it's doing as it looks down to the tiny things around us what a telescope does to our solar system and the things visible in the skies above us. You look at that thing there up in the upper left-hand corner, there's a whole world that exists. As you think, as you're sitting in your home right now, you might have quite a few of these things running around in your house. But they're so tiny, they're so incredibly small that we can't even see them. To say that we can't see them with a naked eye is an overstatement. We can't see them with our naked eye, magnified quite a few times. These things are extremely tiny. Now, where did such things come from? Now, with these and other highly questionable arguments, I'm trying to be kind here, our atheist friends are competing for the minds and hearts of men. The atheists are competing for the hearts and minds of your children. Now, let's try to remember, when we are ridiculed for what we believe, that both Bible believers and atheists base their beliefs on faith. Both Christianity and atheism, they are faith systems. They're systems born on that which we do not know, but which we believe. All right. Another thing is, we ask this question, why should we believe in God exists? Why should we believe that God exists? And as we answer that question, reasons that we believe God exists, let's move along and take something else into consideration as we look at another obstacle that Satan has put before us. That is, science is not God. Now, we have great respect for science, but we don't seem to have the same understanding for the limitations of science. Now, scientists have greatly blessed our country and have greatly blessed the world. I don't want to speak against what science has done. The advances in the medical community, that our hospitals here in America, the hospitals over there in Europe, the hospitals in India, the things they can do and to help people is incredible. And we're thankful for the advances in science that have made these things possible. You think of the things they've done in space with satellites, and think of all the applications there are. These are just a few of the things. The applications of satellites. You've got your cell phone, the internet, the what do we call those things? We call them a Garmin over here. The GPS, your global positioning. The smart bomb over there on the right side. And as you look at these uses of the satellites. These are just, we're just talking about these things, and the medical advances we've seen in our society because of science. And we're just touching just a few things here. The science has done great things for modern civilization. Now, in spite of the great accomplishments of science, we must recognize that there are limitations to what science can do. Science is a methodology. You have a kind of trial and error. They say that when Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, and that after he had tried 150 times, he said, somebody asked him about his failures, and he said, well, no, I've learned 150 ways how not to make the light bulb. He had this slow process of trial and error to find out exactly how things could come together. There was this methodology that he worked. Now, the methodologies that are proven, that we can see with our naked eye, we say, oh, look what science has done. However, you can't test. You cannot test Abraham Lincoln by scientific methodology. You can't examine him in a laboratory. You have to look at facts that we have about him. You have to look at the historical information. You don't study Abraham Lincoln like you would study how to make a light bulb or how to invent a light bulb. They're two different things. Abraham Lincoln comes forth as one who existed on this earth at one time. History shows him, and we have to go back and find out what history has to say about him in order to know about Abraham Lincoln. Scientific methodology could never tell who Abraham Lincoln was, or if he ever existed. You think of geology, the study of rocks. You don't study geology via scientific method. It is limited to several fields of study, and the studies show that you can learn what has happened, but they cannot tell you why. Geology is something that says, here's what we see has happened. It can't go on to say, here's why it happened. Let's look at the subject that's very basic to science, gravity. Now, all believe in the pull of gravity. The definition of gravity, which I took from livescience.com, gravity is the force that attracts two bodies toward each other, the force that causes apples to fall toward the ground and the planets to orbit the sun. The more massive an object is, the stronger its gravitational pull. Now, when you drop a coin, the first second after you drop that coin, it will drop 32 feet. The second second, it will drop 64 feet. The third second, it will drop 96 feet. The fourth second, it will drop 128 feet, and on and on and on, ever increasing in speed. This is what gravity does. Now, why does it do that? Science does not know. It can't tell you. Science cannot tell you how gravity works. You see, science has its limitations. Science cannot tell us if there is a God. It cannot tell us if all things came into existence through divine creation, or did they come into existence from the Big Bang, some say has happened in the past. Science cannot tell us that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. As we look at history, the history of science, that is, we see that science is constantly in a state of flux. They're constantly changing. What a child learns in the 3rd or 4th grade in his science class will not be the same thing that he has learned when he gets to college. Why is that? Because science changes. By the time that child has passed 7, 8, 10 years after being in third, fourth grade, he's going to hear things from his science teacher that are totally different. Science changes as it learns new facts. It continues to learn more things. For example, you think of the light bulb. We talked about Thomas Edison. Now, Thomas Edison's light bulb, while it was a great thing in its time, has gone through many changes as they have come up with better ways to make light bulbs. Now, you look at the light bulb of Thomas Edison's day, all science could say is, this is how to make a light bulb. That's all they know. But as more experiments have taken place over the years, now we have these new light bulbs that they last a lot longer. They're brighter. They don't take as much we don't have to pay as much for them. But you see, what you have there is you have the evolution of light bulbs, and the reason the scientists can tell you all about what is going on up to now is because of methodology. They can say, well, yes, what Edison invented a long time ago was really pretty primitive, but they couldn't say it was primitive back then in the 1800s when Edison invented the light bulb. They couldn't say that because they hadn't had the testing that they have now. Now, as we look back in time, there was a time when it was believed that the earth was the center of the universe. Later, the sun was thought to be the center of the universe. It was only with time that people start recognizing, well, there's a bigger universe out there. The sun might be the center of our solar system. You can't say it's the center of the universe. But you see, it was only with testing and examination that people come to understand our solar system to the extent that they do. Many years ago thought that the earth was flat. And then Magellan there, about what was in the 1500s, when he sailed around the world, he showed that the earth was a circle, or more or less. In the 19th century, doctors who were doing their best that their profession taught them, they would often bleed people to cure sicknesses. They would cut the person's veins open and let them bleed for a while to cure sickness. In the 1970s here in America, and maybe in Europe also, I can give you the data on this, there were many scientists, and there was lots of writing in scientific magazines about this, that the earth was slowly entering into an ice age. We were getting colder and colder and colder, and the earth was going to go into an ice age. Now, 50 years later, what do we have? We have these people claiming that there's going to be global warming. They didn't know, and I don't believe they know what they're talking about when they talk about global warming. Now, I'm not trying to minimize science. I believe science has done great things for mankind. I'm just giving a bigger picture of it beyond the areas where it has been right. We look at the things where science has been right, and the way it's been right is by methodology, by trial and error. Science is constantly in a state of flux because they're continually testing and learning new things. We're just now scratching the surface of space. We're not in a good position to say much about outer space. Science can only tell us about space after sufficient information has been attained, after a number of facts have been established. Scientists are just men, they're pursuing a particular field of study. They're just men who are involved in a particular, you know, job that they've taken on. They have the same prejudice as you and I have. They have their own political philosophies, just like we do. They have their own religious beliefs, as other men. And their own backgrounds and their own beliefs color their view of things, just like our backgrounds and our beliefs color the view of things that we do. Scientists are mere men who have chosen a field of study. When scientists who have studied chemistry make pronouncements about religion, and they haven't spent any time studying the Bible, they don't know anything about the Bible, and then they study chemistry, and then they make pronouncements about the Bible and about religion. They speak against it. And we're tempted to believe them because we recognize how great they are in chemistry. Look at a smart man this is. The fact that they are skilled in chemistry says nothing about their knowledge of God and the Bible. Now, Bible study is, among other things, a study of history. This is a totally different way of learning than the scientific method. Now, studying history is different from the methods of science. Historians who have made study of the Civil War here in America that took place in the middle of the 1800s, when they make a study of the Civil War, their discipline is to read autobiographies of men who experienced the war, or diaries of men who were in the war, or histories written by authors who interviewed Civil War survivors. They might read newspaper articles of the time of the Civil War. They might go out and visit battlefields or other historic places having to do with the Civil War. Now, if you asked many learned scientists, men who had spent lots of time in their field, if you asked them about the details of the Civil War, they would be clueless. Now, of course, there are probably some scientists who have interest in the Civil War and read about it on their spare time. But I'm talking about the ones who don't. If you take a man who's very learned, an intelligent scientist, and you ask him, what was the most important thing that the North did to win the Civil War? How did the North come out on top? They would be completely without any answer. You see, the historical way of learning is far different from the scientific way of learning. Now, students of Bible history may study specific meanings of original languages. They might get Hebrew or Greek lexicons and study the meaning of words. They may study specific Bible texts that we have every reason to believe date from the specific time of history that they are writing about. We might access ancient documents which help in giving evidence. A Bible student may look at archaeological findings pertinent to their studies. And you see, there is a big difference between science and Bible study. The scientific method is something that you do not want to practice when it comes to your relationship with God, because science goes by trial and error. And now they say, and the scientist says, I don't believe in God. Well, see, if you go along with the science idea of methodology that he learns by examination and by these these things they put forth they go through in the laboratories, all these examinations and things like that they go through. Now, you take a scientist and he says, I don't believe there's a God. But you see, the only way he's going to learn by his using methodology is wait until he dies and see if there is a God, because that will be the final test. That's when he'll get his final examination there of all the things that he's looked at in his life. And so the methodology that scientists use is not proper in approaching what the Bible says. In fact, it's not proper in approaching what a lot of things that so-called scientists would say is true today. The scientific truths a lot of times cannot stand because there's no methodology to prove what they believe. Now, what would be the primary sources we would use to prove the Big Bang? There are no eyewitnesses to the Big Bang. There was nobody there at the beginning. After all, they say that life and everything else began back there. There's no evidence that we can use to repeat the event and look at it and examine it over and over again so we can learn more about the Big Bang. There's nobody there to do any methodological research here. Now, as we go back in time using all the technology known to man at this time, the most advanced age of man we live in at this time, and yet, as we go back in time using all the technology known to man, is there any way we can know that a Big Bang actually happened? Now, we cannot help but know that some of the most prominent believers in the Big Bang theory in our time, that they are also well-known atheists. You find these scientists, though they know so much he's a scientist, but they're known for being atheists. Now, could their atheism influence their thinking? And so it must be admitted that one's own presuppositions will color his explanation of this phenomena. An atheist's view of origins are going to be different than that of one who believes in God. Now, you have before you right here, a picture of the Colorado River, which is running through the Grand Canyon, the Grand Canyon is one of the great sites to visit here in America. Now, if I went to the Grand Canyon, what might I see as one who believes in God? I might look at the beauty of divine creation. I might see evidence for the worldwide flood as I look at the various levels and the various rock formations. As you go up the levels, the sides of the Grand Canyon, you find there's different rock formations. And it seems that the heavier rocks settled first, and then the ones settled after it, and one settled after that. So you have these big layers of rock formation, which really kind of goes along with the idea of the flood of Noah's time. But you get an atheist to go out and look at the Grand Canyon. Well, he might see, oh, look at the billions of years of evolution we see here. Now you see, our view is affected by what we believe. Now we come to the point of study. Why should we believe in God? This is what we're studying here this week and, Lord willing, next week. What are the reasons we have for believing in God? Well, first of all, look at the argument from design. Now, William Paley said back in the 19th century, if there is a watch, there must be a watchmaker. Now, that makes pretty good sense. You look at those watches that were made back then, and they were really complex. To wind up that watch and then let it run the whole day. You look at something as complex as that, there must be someone who made it. Now let's make application of this to the universe itself. Now, what you have before you right now is a working model of the universe. And you can see the little gears underneath there that you get the thing running, and the planets. You have the sun there in the middle and the planets that are on the little sticks there holding them up, that they rotate around the sun when you get this little machine going here. Now, if you saw this working model of the universe, what would be your natural reaction? This is set up just like the planets going around the sun. And what would we conclude from this? Well, someone made this. Someone would say, who made that? Who was the one who put all that together? Now, there is a maker of this model. Everybody believes that. Everybody believes as they look at this model of the universe that there's a maker of this. But then people deny a maker of our universe. Now, as we look at this artist's conception of our solar system, which is just part of the universe, how can we explain the universe that we have around us without looking for a maker? How can we look at the things we see around us and not marvel at it and think, boy, how great God must be who made these things? Or we might not say, well, even the person who doesn't believe in the God of the Bible, he realizes the thinking, honest person realizes there's a being behind our universe. You cannot deny this. Now look at the precise the ways that the Earth our solar system functions. It's amazing. It's very precise. The Earth, as we are sitting here right now, or standing, depending on what you're doing, the Earth is traveling at 70,000 miles an hour as it revolves around the sun. Now think about that. As you are listening to me, you're sitting there right now, and might not be moving at all. You're going 70,000 miles an hour, a little bit over that. And it takes 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 45.51 seconds to orbit the Earth, or orbit the sun, excuse me. This is why we have a leap year every 4 years, because we have to make up for those seconds there. We have clocks that have to be adjusted, but our solar system, it adjusts itself. Earth is perfectly situated in this universe also. If it was too close to the sun, we would burn up. If we were too far away, we would freeze to death. But it's perfectly located to be able to sustain life. We're able to go on because of the way the Earth rotates around or orbits the sun. Now, gravitational pull of other planets also protects our universe from being hit by meteors. Now, you look at this makes life possible as we think of the orbit of the Earth and the protection we get from the gravitational pull of other planets. Now, if this world is so organized, we have to ask, who organized it? What would be capable of building a universe? A man can make a car or a house, a sidewalk, but who can make a universe? Where did all the things that make up the universe come from? Let's move on. It's amazing what cameras can do these days. The digital camera that they have put together, or they've invented here in the last 10 years or so, are just incredible. The pictures they can take. And we think about Canon or Nikon or Fujitsu, what other camera makers, and we think what must go on in their their factories or their experimental labs or whatever they use to put these things together. But it's just incredible the thing what these things can do. This one lady showed me some pictures taken with her uh, uh, digital camera, and it was just so far above anything that I've ever seen, as far as just the ability of an amateur like you and I are taking pictures. It was just spectacular. Now, as we think about these things, we look at that and we recognize someone made that camera, someone or some number of someone's. But we see an eye, and an eye is far superior to any camera that has ever been made. It is more complex than any camera that you could ever imagine. It has automatic focus. It has natural adjustment to light and darkness. We do not have to change lens when we look at something that's a little bit brighter, and then we turn to look at the ground. We don't have to change lenses or anything. The eye just completely adjusts to the amount of light that it has around us. There's no adjustments that are made to distinguish between black and white and color, unlike cameras. And then you have the eyes of fishes. They have natural fisheye lenses in their eyes. Now, men make fisheye lenses for cameras, and they're varied lenses. You have this particular lens for this, and you have your fisheye camera, or you have your fisheye lens for this. But the fish, they have that fisheye that just is fitted for his environment, and it can see the things that it needs to see. It's made that way. And you see, I have an eye that's fitted for my environment. It's totally different. And then look at the eagle's eye. The eagle flies a quarter mile above the earth. Now, does he put on telescopic lens? Does he put could you ever see one holding a periscope or something? Or I can't find the word with my older age. I'm forgetting so much. But you ever see an eagle with binoculars looking down? Well, no, we don't see that. See, an eagle has eyes that, just as they are, he can see a mouse over a mile away. The American falcon can spot a bug 75 yards away, a bug that's just 2 millimeters wide. That falcon can see the bug 75 yards away, a bug that's just 2 millimeters wide. That's just incredible. We're just amazed at that. Now, as you look at this, these things we looked at about the human eye, the eagle's eye, the cameras, the fish eyes, all of this is evidence of design. Now, evolution may cause a wart or a mole, but only a designer can bring such design as we see here. And I believe that designer is God. Now, let's suppose, as we think about the evolution, as these our atheist friends would say, oh, the eagle, the mouse, the fish, the human eye, it all just evolved. And as we think about that, let's suppose that you had 10 pennies in your pocket. Now, these are American minted coins here. The penny is the smallest denomination of the coins that we have, but you have 10 pennies. Now, as you look at those pennies, you take an ink pen and you write on the pennies. 1, 2, 3 for each one. 1 for 1, 2, and then next penny 3, next penny 4, all the way up to 10. So you have pennies numbered from 1 to 10. And let's say you take all those pennies and you put them in your pocket. Now the game we're playing here is that you reach in your pocket and you pull out a penny. And what you're wanting to do as we play this game, you're wanting to pull out penny number 1 first, and then penny number 2 second, and penny number 3 third, and penny number 4 fourth, all the way up to penny number 10. Penny number 10. That's the game we're playing. Can you, just by your reach in your pocket by a blind chance, can you, as we play this game, pull out penny number 1 first, penny number 2 second, penny number 3 third, and on and on? Now, first of all, the chance of my taking penny number 1 on the first pull is 1 in 10. The chance of taking penny number 2 is 1 in 100. And then, having drawn out penny number 1 and penny number 2, and then reaching in for penny number 3, my chances of taking penny number 3 next in order is 1 in 1,000. But let's just say I do it, and now I'm reaching in my pocket for penny number 4. The chance of my picking penny number 4 is 1 in 10,000. Now, by the time you get up to penny number 10, the chance of my going all the way up to number 10, going in sequential order, drawing 1 first, second, penny number 2 second, penny number 3 third, and on, the chance of going all the way up to number 10 is 1 in 10 billion. 1 in 10 billion. Now, that's about the chance you would take if you were to buy a lottery ticket. You have a lot more chance of getting hit by lightning than you do of winning the lottery. Now, you think of these pennies here and how just by chance you're going to get them to get from 1 to 10 in numerical order. And the chance you have of doing that is 1 in 10 billion. Now you think of all the things that our atheist friends say were evolved, all the different eyes that we looked at, and we're going to look at more, Lord willing, next week. I should say I'm not going to get into the design anymore next week, excuse me. But you can look at design in so many aspects in our world and in our universe. And as you look at our little experiment with pennies, that means all of those things, as complex as they are, and we're not talking about just 10, things that are making it up, 10 components. We're talking about zillions of components that make up the human eye, or make up a lot of other things that are part of either the human or an animal's body. And we look at these things and people say, oh, I believe all this just evolved. The evolutionist person, the person who believes evolution has a lot of faith in his chance, in his idea that, it all just came into being just by blind chance. Because he thinks all of these things that we see, all the things we see above us, all the things we see in our world, that these things just happen to come into existence. They just happen to be put together the way they are. And we're speaking about a whole lot more things than just those 10 pennies. The atheist has more faith in possibility than many people of God do when they say they believe in God. And yet he has less reason. Our reasons for believing in God are far greater than the atheist has for believing in the things that he believes that really amount to there is no God. Now, why is it that I believe God? And I believe that he exists. I believe it's more natural to explain how things have existed by saying God did this. It's really more rational. It's more natural to explain how things have come into existence by God rather than by random chance. So I'm not ashamed to stand before people and say that I believe in God. I believe it's much more natural to explain all the things we see through the existence of God rather than say that all of this came into existence by blind chance. I believe in God because that is the more rational explanation of the things that exist. As we look at our verse again, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I believe things we've studied show the truth of what we have seen. That the truth comes out of what we've seen. I believe that what we've studied show that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I hope to carry on with this subject next Sunday morning. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, brother.
You're welcome, brother.
Yes, brother. We could not see. Yes, yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
brother.
I've meant to. I've made a mistake there. I should have shut the camera off so I get better